A powerful millionaire makes a shocking deal with a homeless artist. He'll pay her to have his child. No strings attached, but neither of them could predict what would happen next. Before we dive into this unforgettable story, comment below with the city or country you're watching from. Now, let's begin. Chase Donovan had everything a man could want: money, respect, control. At 43, he was at the peak of his empire, having built a vast real estate and investment fortune from the ground up. Yet, on a cool evening in his high-rise penthouse, surrounded by glass walls and priceless art, he felt it, an emptiness he couldn't buy his way out of. He poured himself a drink and stood in silence, gazing out at the skyline. He had no children, no one to pass his legacy to. His 2 failed marriages had left him more cynical than ever about love. "It complicates everything," he'd muttered after the second divorce. Relationships were messy, unpredictable, things he'd spent his entire life avoiding. But a child? That was different. A child was purpose, legacy, continuation, something pure and personal, but still within his control. He didn't want the drama of a family or the vulnerability of a partner. What he wanted was an arrangement, a contract. Clean, emotion-free. He would handle it like every other part of his life, with precision and clear terms. He sat at his desk and scribbled out notes: what he wanted, what he'd offer, the legal framework. He didn't need affection, he needed agreement, a surrogate, but not one found through the usual medical clinics. That wasn't personal enough. He wanted to choose someone simple, disconnected, who wouldn't get attached, someone who needed help as much as he needed a child. The next morning, Chase slipped into his usual black suit, grabbed his keys, and drove his sleek silver coupe through downtown. The city buzzed around him, but his thoughts were laser-focused on his plan. As he stopped at a red light near the Arts District, something caught his eye. There, huddled on the sidewalk near a coffee shop window, sat a young woman. Her hair was unkempt, her jeans torn, but she sat with surprising calm, sketching on a piece of paper against the wall. Her hands were stained with pencil lead. There was no phone, no backpack, just her, lost in a world she was drawing. People passed her without even glancing, but Chase couldn't stop looking. He leaned slightly toward the window, curious. Who sketches on a sidewalk like that, with nothing to their name? The light turned green. He hesitated. Then he drove off. 2 blocks later, he pulled into a parking lot and stared at the steering wheel, tapping his fingers. Logic told him to move on, but something inside twisted: curiosity, instinct, something more. He turned the car around. When he returned, she was still there, sketching with fierce focus. Without overthinking, he pulled up beside the curb and lowered the window. "Hey," he called out. The woman looked up slowly, guarded. Her eyes were striking, a clear gray that stood out against her tired features. "What?" "Come here," Chase said bluntly. She didn't move. "Why?" "I'm not asking twice," he said. "I want to talk." Still wary, she stood and approached the car cautiously. Up close, her face looked both young and worn. Maybe early 30s, maybe younger. Her jaw was set firm. No signs of weakness. She stopped a few feet away. "If this is some kind of offer, I'm not that desperate." Chase gave a tight frown. "Don't flatter yourself. I don't have time for that. I want to talk, that's all." She blinked at him, trying to read his face. Silence stretched. He waited. Finally, she exhaled and opened the passenger door. "If you try anything weird, I walk." "Fair enough." They drove in silence, the hum of the city slowly fading behind them. After a few turns, Chase parked in front of a quiet corner cafe. They entered, sat at a table tucked in the back, and ordered nothing. He went straight to the point. "What's your name?" he asked. "Zara Lane," she replied cautiously. "And what do you want from me?" "I want you to have my child," Chase said plainly. Zara stared at him, frozen. The sentence hung in the air like a challenge. "You're joking," she said, half laughing. "I'm not," he replied without blinking. "This isn't a relationship. I'm not looking for love. I just want a child, on my terms. No emotional entanglements, just a contract. You'd be compensated generously. You'd have security. And once the child is born, you move on." Her jaw dropped slightly, then clamped shut. "You're out of your mind." Chase shrugged. "Maybe, but I'm also serious. You have 24 hours. Think about it. After that, I'm gone. He stood up, adjusted his cufflinks, and left the cafe without another word. Zara sat alone, her mind spinning. What kind of man says that to a stranger? But she couldn't ignore the spark of possibility beneath her disbelief. She had nothing, no home, no job, barely enough food, and here was a man offering her a strange but clear path out. Was it mad? Yes. But it was real. The next evening, Chase stood in his penthouse, pacing with quiet impatience. At exactly 6 p.m., his assistant notified him. She's here. He nodded. Send her up. The elevator opened with a soft chime. Zara stepped in, dressed in clean, second-hand clothes she must have borrowed or found. Her face was calm, but her eyes told the story. She had made a hard decision. I'll do it, she said. Chase didn't smile, but he gave a satisfied nod. Then let's make it official. He handed her the contract, long, detailed, full of legal language. She read it, page by page, while he poured water into 2 glasses. They said little. She signed. It was done. He handed her a keycard, a phone, and an address. You'll move in tomorrow. Everything will be handled from there. As she left the apartment, Zara's fingers trembled slightly as they clutched the contract. She had no idea what she had just stepped into, or how much her life was about to change. The next morning, Zara stood at the gate of a sprawling estate on the outskirts of the city. Her backpack slung over one shoulder and the keycard Chase had given her gripped tightly in her hand. The iron gates opened with a soft buzz, revealing a long cobblestone driveway lined with perfectly trimmed hedges and towering oak trees. At the end stood a massive mansion, its stone walls glowing gold under the rising sun. It looked like something out of a magazine, grand, quiet, detached from the rest of the world. She walked slowly up to the front door where a woman in her mid-40s greeted her with a polite smile. Ms. Lane, I'm Valerie. I manage the household. Come in. I'll show you to your room. Zara followed her through the marble foyer, past crystal chandeliers and polished wood paneling. Everything felt sterile, perfect, and a little too quiet. Valerie led her up a wide staircase and down a hall into a large suite with floor-to-ceiling windows, a walk-in closet, and a king-size bed. This will be your space during your stay here, Valerie said, gesturing around. Meals are served at 8, 12, and 6. A private physician will arrive this afternoon to conduct some initial tests. Zara nodded slowly, still overwhelmed. And, Mr. Donovan? He's busy with work, but he'll be checking in occasionally. Valerie replied. You won't be expected to interact unless necessary. That felt about right. Over the next few days, Zara tried to settle in. Meals arrived on time, prepared by an unseen kitchen staff. A nurse came daily to monitor her health. The house was quiet, and Chase remained elusive. She caught brief glimpses of him in passing, on the phone, in meetings, always moving. When they did exchange words, they were brief, clinical, purposeful. It was exactly the kind of arrangement Chase had wanted, emotionless, orderly. And yet, it wasn't that simple. One afternoon, as Zara left the sunroom after a blood test, she unexpectedly crossed paths with Chase in the hallway. He was heading toward the office, a tablet in one hand and his suit crisp as ever. She nodded politely. Feeling okay? He asked, pausing. I guess, she replied, her voice flat. He studied her for a moment, as if trying to understand something. Good. Let me know if Valerie isn't meeting your needs. She tilted her head slightly. You always talk like a contract. Chase's expression didn't change, but he didn't respond either. He turned and continued down the hall. Later that evening, she sat outside in the garden, sketching the fountain at the center of the courtyard. Drawing calmed her. It was something she did before everything in her life unraveled. The sun was low, casting long golden rays across the stone. She didn't hear him approach. That's what you were doing the day I saw you, Chase said from behind her. She turned slightly. Yeah, drawing helps me think. He nodded once. You're good. Thanks, she replied, unsure of what to say. Didn't think you'd remember. I remember everything, Chase said, then paused before adding, I had a gift sent to your room. Later that night, she found it, a leather-bound sketchbook and a full set of graphite pencils, neatly arranged in a velvet-lined case. For a moment, She just stared at them. It was the first time since she arrived that she felt seen. The next morning, the doctor arrived again. This time, Chase surprised everyone by joining the appointment. Zara raised an eyebrow. "Didn't expect you here. I want to make sure everything is going smoothly," he said. "It's my child too, remember?" She didn't argue. As she lay back on the exam table, the room fell quiet. The technician placed the cold gel on her stomach and moved the ultrasound wand gently. A soft rhythmic sound filled the room, steady, pulsing. A heartbeat, then another. The technician blinked, then smiled. "Well, here's something we didn't catch before. You're expecting twins." Zara's head snapped toward the screen. "Wait, twins?" Chase's jaw clenched, but he didn't move. "Yes," the doctor confirmed. "Two strong, healthy heartbeats. Congratulations." Zara stared at the monitor, her heart racing. She hadn't signed up for this. 2 lives growing inside her. Double the responsibility, double the emotional weight. As they drove back to the mansion, neither of them spoke for a while. But the silence wasn't cold. It was heavy with questions, with thoughts they hadn't planned on having. "You don't seem like someone who gets surprised easily," Zara said finally, staring out the window. "I'm not," Chase replied. "But this is different." She turned her head toward him, watching his profile. He looked calm, as always, but something in his posture had shifted. He wasn't just thinking, he was feeling. "It's a lot, isn't it?" she asked softly. "It's more than I ever calculated," he admitted. "I can't plan who they'll become. I can't control what they'll feel or who they'll grow into." Zara nodded slowly. "Yeah, that's what being human is like." That night, as she sat in the garden again, flipping through her new sketchbook, she found herself sketching something different. Not just buildings or fountains. This time, she drew a scene from memory, 2 small figures, side by side, holding hands in front of a sunlit mansion. She didn't know why, but it brought her peace. Inside, Chase stood at his office window, sipping whiskey and staring out at the moonlight. For the first time in years, he felt uncertain and yet alive. The weeks that followed were both calm and complicated. Zara fell into a routine. Morning walks around the garden, doctor appointments twice a week, meals delivered without conversation. Yet beneath the stillness of the mansion's halls, something was shifting, not just in her body as the babies grew, but between her and Chase. Though he remained mostly distant, their interactions were changing, less mechanical, less formal. He no longer avoided eye contact. He began asking how she was sleeping, how her appetite was. One morning, he even asked if she still enjoyed drawing in the evenings. It was a small gesture, but it made her pause. One evening, after a mild checkup, Chase insisted on escorting her to the car personally instead of letting the staff handle it. "You don't have to," Zara said, trying to read his expression. "I want to," he replied. "It's important that you feel safe." As he opened the car door for her, she hesitated. "You're changing, Chase. I can't tell if that's a good thing or if I should be worried." He looked at her, not quite smiling. "Maybe it's both." The car ride back to the mansion was quiet again, but the silence felt different, warmer somehow. When they got home, Zara found a note on her nightstand written in neat handwriting. "I don't expect you to trust me, but I'm trying, Chase." Zara stared at it for a long time before folding it carefully and tucking it between the pages of her sketchbook. The next day, she found Chase in the library, sitting alone, flipping through old photo albums. She stepped inside quietly but paused when she noticed a rare expression on his face. He looked lost, vulnerable. She knocked lightly on the doorframe. "I didn't mean to interrupt," she said. He looked up quickly, caught off guard. "It's fine. I was just remembering." "Family?" she asked. "My parents. They weren't around much," he said, setting the album down. "They believed success was enough, that everything else would follow." Zara stepped in a little farther. "And did it?" Chase chuckled quietly. "I built an empire, but I still don't know what family really feels like." Zara hesitated, then sat across from him. "Maybe you're learning now." That night, neither of them said much at dinner, but the atmosphere had changed. It wasn't quite friendship, not yet, but it was no longer business either. As the weeks passed and her belly grew rounder, Zara found herself smiling more, sleeping better, She still had bad days, moments of doubt, fear about what would happen after the birth, but she also felt a strange comfort she hadn't known in years. She was no longer just surviving. One morning, she was sketching by the window when Chase walked in holding a wrapped box. "What's that?" she asked, eyebrow raised. "You mentioned your old tablet broke," he said, placing it on the table. "I had a new one sent over, with drawing software installed." She blinked, surprised. "That's thoughtful." He nodded, his voice low. "You deserve tools that help you do what you love." Zara opened the box slowly and smiled. "Thank you. I didn't think you'd remember that detail." "I remember more than you think," he said. For a moment, their eyes locked, and for the first time, there was no tension, no obligation, just two people sharing something genuine. Later that afternoon, Zara joined him in the study for tea. It had become a quiet ritual, 15 minutes. No pressure, just conversation. "I know we had rules," Chase said, stirring his cup, "but I want to talk about what happens after." Zara's hand froze mid-air. "After the birth?" she asked, carefully. "Yes, I know what the contract says. You leave, no strings. But I want you to understand something." She set her cup down and folded her hands in her lap. "If you need anything, support, help, anything at all, I'll be there," he said. She looked at him, searching his face. "Why are you telling me this?" He didn't answer right away. Then, quietly, he said, "Because I'm not the same man I was when this started." Zara felt her throat tighten. "I don't know what to do with that." "You don't have to do anything," he said, "just know I mean it." In the days that followed, they grew closer, not in a romantic way, but in understanding. Chase began walking with her during her morning strolls. He listened more. He laughed once, a deep, genuine sound that caught even him by surprise. One night, as they sat in the garden beneath the stars, he turned to her. "You've changed me," he said. Zara raised an eyebrow. "I haven't done anything. You've shown me I don't need to control everything." He admitted, "Some things are worth surrendering to." She didn't reply, but her smile said enough. A few weeks later, the doctor scheduled another major ultrasound. This time, Chase was already waiting in the clinic when Zara arrived. As the technician moved the wand across her stomach, the sound of steady heartbeats filled the room. And then, another surprise. "Looks like you're having twins," the technician said cheerfully. Zara's eyes went wide. "Twins?" Chase blinked in stunned silence. "You're sure?" "Positive. 2 strong, healthy heartbeats." Zara looked at Chase, whose expression had gone completely still. Then, slowly, he let out a breath. On the drive home, the silence between them wasn't awkward, it was full of meaning. "This changes things," Zara said softly. "Yes," Chase replied, "in ways I never expected." Zara turned her head and looked out the window, her hand resting gently on her stomach. She felt the baby's kick, a small, fluttering movement that made her smile. She whispered, more to herself than to him. 2 lives, 2 futures. Chase glanced at her, then back at the road. For the first time, "I'm not sure what comes next." Neither of them said anything more. But they both knew, this was no longer just a deal. It was something far more complicated, and far more real. The days after the twins' discovery felt heavier somehow, not with dread, but with weight, the kind of weight that came from reality settling in. Zara started preparing herself, emotionally and mentally, for motherhood. She wasn't just carrying a baby anymore, there were 2 tiny humans growing inside her. 2 lives that had entered her world completely unexpectedly. And though she'd signed a contract with clear terms, she couldn't help but feel that everything was starting to shift. Chase, too, was changing. It was in the way he moved through the house, less like a man with a mission and more like someone trying to be present. He wasn't overly affectionate or expressive, but he showed up, at every appointment, for every meal. He asked questions, listened. One evening, Zara caught him standing by the nursery, which was still under renovation. He had his hands in his pockets, just staring at the freshly painted walls. "You're not the kind of man I pictured in a pastel-colored room," she teased softly. Chase turned, a little surprised, then gave her a half-smile. "I didn't think I'd be that man either." She stepped beside him, glancing around. "It's becoming real now, huh?" He nodded slowly. I keep trying to calculate how this will go. But every time I think I've figured it out, something changes. Zara looked up at him. You can't plan for people, Chase. Not really. You can plan around them. But you can't control what they feel, or what you'll feel. Her words lingered in the air. Chase didn't respond, but she could see something shift in his eyes. That night, as Zara sat on her bed sketching, she flipped through earlier drawings and paused at one, two small hands reaching out toward the sky. She hadn't intended to draw it, but there it was, a quiet symbol of the life she was now carrying inside her. There was a knock on the door. She opened it to find Chase holding a tray with tea and a small bowl of fruit. Couldn't sleep, he said simply. Same, she replied, letting him in. They sat in the lounge area of her suite, quietly sipping tea. The room glowed with soft lamp light, casting gentle shadows. After a few minutes of silence, Chase spoke. I know this started as a transaction, and I've done everything in my power to keep it that way. But, Zara looked at him, waiting. I keep thinking about what happens after. About the twins. About you. Her heartbeat picked up. I'm not saying I know what I want yet, he continued, but I know I don't want to disappear from your life. From theirs. Zara sat her cup down slowly. And what exactly are you saying? He gave a tired, almost vulnerable smile. I'm saying I don't know how to walk away anymore. Zara didn't reply. She wasn't sure how. Weeks passed. Zara's belly grew heavier, her steps slower. The nursery was finished now, soft creams, forest greens, and sky blues. 2 cribs sat side by side near the window, waiting. Chase spent more time at home. His office, once buzzing with phone calls and endless meetings, grew quieter. He joined her for breakfast, sat with her during ultrasounds, even started asking the doctors questions himself. I don't want to just be a name on their birth certificate, he told her one afternoon. I want to be a father. You're on the right path, Zara said quietly. But not everything was easy. Despite the growing bond, the contract still loomed between them like a wall. Its clauses were clear. At birth, custody was his. She would leave. No shared rights. No visits. Zara had tried to ignore it. But as the due date crept closer, so did her anxiety. One morning, she found Chase on the patio, looking out at the sunrise. She stood beside him for a while before speaking. So, when the twins are born, she began. What happens to me? He turned to her slowly. What do you mean? I mean, she hesitated, trying to keep her voice steady. I go, right? I leave, and you take over. That's the deal. Chase was quiet for a moment. Then he reached into his coat and pulled out a manila folder. The contract. He held it between them. Zara's eyes widened. What are you doing? He didn't say anything. He simply ripped the pages in half. Then again, and again. When it was done, he let the pieces fall to the ground like snowflakes. I don't want this to be a deal anymore, he said. Zara's voice trembled. How can I trust you won't change your mind later? When things get hard. He stepped closer, his voice raw. Because I've already lived a life where I tried to feel nothing, to rely on no one. It left me with everything and yet completely empty. And you, he paused, emotion in his throat. You showed me what it feels like to actually be alive. Tears welled in Zara's eyes, but she blinked them back. I'm scared. So am I, he admitted. But I'd rather be scared with you than safe without you. She stood frozen for a moment. Then she nodded, and fell into his arms. Later that night, as the rain gently tapped the windows and the house lay still, Zara stood over the cribs. She touched the soft blankets, feeling a peace she hadn't known in years. Behind her, Chase walked in quietly and placed his hands on her shoulders. We're in this together now, he said. She turned to face him. Yes, she whispered, her voice firm. We are. The night before Zara went into labor was calm, almost unnaturally so. A soft breeze rustled the curtains in her bedroom, and somewhere in the garden, the wind chimes sang a gentle lullaby. She had trouble sleeping. The twins shifted often, and with every movement, she was reminded how close she was to crossing a threshold that once felt impossible. Chase had been unusually attentive all day. He hovered nearby, not smothering her, but never far. When she sat in the sunroom sketching, he brought her tea. When she napped, he made sure the entire house stayed quiet. It was his way of preparing for something he couldn't control, no matter how much he wanted to. Around 2 a.m., the first contraction hit. It wasn't gentle. Zara clutched the edge of the bed frame and inhaled sharply. Then came the second, then the third. She called out, and within moments, Chase burst through the door. His shirt wrinkled, eyes wide. "It's happening," she whispered. Without missing a beat, he called for Valerie and instructed the staff to get the car ready. He helped her into a comfortable robe, packed her overnight bag, and kept one hand steady on her back as they walked slowly down the stairs. Zara's face was pale, but her eyes were focused, determined, in pain, but ready. The ride to the hospital was a blur of deep breaths and firm handholding. Chase stayed beside her, quiet but present, his fingers wrapped around hers, anchoring her through every jolt of pain. "You're going to be okay," he kept whispering. "You've got this." At the hospital, the medical team moved with quiet urgency. Zara was wheeled into the delivery room while Chase signed paperwork and answered questions. For the first time in his life, he felt like everything was out of his hands, and yet, it didn't feel like failure. It felt like trust. The next few hours were intense. Zara gritted her teeth through each contraction, squeezing Chase's hand hard enough to leave marks. He stayed by her side, brushing hair from her face, whispering words of encouragement. There were no cameras, no assistants, no business calls, just him, her, and the children about to change their lives. And then, at 6:42 a.m., it happened. A piercing cry filled the room. Then another. A boy and a girl. The doctors moved quickly, checking vitals, cleaning the newborns, wrapping them in soft blankets. Zara was exhausted, soaked in sweat, but her face was glowing. She tried to sit up, arms reaching instinctively. "They're beautiful," she whispered. Chase stood still for a moment, overwhelmed. Then he stepped forward, his hands trembling slightly, and took the little girl into his arms while a nurse handed the boy to Zara. "You were incredible," he said, staring at her in awe. Tears welled up in her eyes. "We both were." Later that morning, as the sun poured into the hospital room, Chase stood at the nursery window, watching the twins sleep side by side. He didn't say much, but the stillness in his face, the soft crease of emotion in his brow, said everything. When Valerie arrived with coffee, she approached quietly and handed him a cup. "Everything all right, Mr. Donovan?" He didn't answer at first. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he replied, "I think this is the first time I understand what love is." The following days blurred together. There were diapers, sleepless nights, 3 a.m. feedings, and more doctor visits. Zara stayed in the hospital suite with the twins while Chase shuttled between home and the ward, always arriving with fresh flowers or extra bottles of lotion or calming tea she never asked for but always needed. They were no longer operating under any agreement. There were no scheduled check-ins, no planned timelines. This was simply their life now. One morning, Zara sat beside the cribs, gently rocking the twins. Chase entered carrying a small baby book and 2 sets of name bracelets. "I figured it's time to make things official," he said. Zara looked up at him. "Names?" He nodded. They had talked briefly about it during her last trimester, but now it felt real. "I like Ava," she said, pointing to the baby girl. "She looks like an Ava." Chase smiled. "And for the boy?" She paused, then said, "Lucas." He blinked. "My father's name." "I know," she said. "You mentioned it once, remember?" He nodded slowly. "Lucas and Ava. Perfect." He slid the bracelets onto their tiny wrists, then gently took a photo of them together. "For the baby book," he said. Zara smiled, her heart full. "You're better at this than I expected." "I'm learning," he said, "thanks to you." Back at the mansion, the nursery now echoed with the soft sounds of new life, tiny giggles, gurgles, late-night cries. Chase installed a rocking chair in the corner and often sat there while Zara rested, humming tunelessly to the twins. He was awkward at first. He fumbled with diapers and spilled formula, but he never gave up. Every day, he improved. Every day, he stayed. And Zara noticed. She saw it in how gently he held them, in how he never checked his phone when he was with them, and in how he looked at her, not with control or detachment, but with genuine admiration. One afternoon, While the twins napped, Zara found Chase in the garden, sketching something in her old sketchbook. She blinked. "You're drawing?" He chuckled. "Trying." "What is it?" He flipped the page toward her. It was a rough outline, but recognizable, her, sitting with the twins beneath the garden tree. "It's us," he said quietly. Zara was speechless. Chase cleared his throat. "Look, I know I wasn't the man you needed in the beginning, but I want to be now. Not because of an agreement, not because of the kids, but because I want a life with you. All of it." Zara's eyes filled again, but this time, they weren't tears of confusion or fear. They were tears of home. The morning sun poured softly into the nursery, casting golden light across the sleeping twins. Zara stood by the window, rocking gently on her heels, eyes scanning the horizon. Everything looked peaceful from the outside, but inside, she was bracing for something. Because today was the day she was supposed to leave. The contract may have been torn to pieces, but the emotional imprint it left behind still lingered. That document had set the rules. Once the twins were born, she would quietly walk away. No ties, no goodbyes, just the end. But life had rewritten the rules. Still, a part of her couldn't help packing a small suitcase. She folded each item slowly, one pair of jeans, a sweater, her sketchbook. She glanced over at the babies one last time, their tiny chests rising and falling with rhythmic trust. She wanted to believe she was free to stay, but a part of her still whispered, what if he changes his mind? Downstairs, Chase sat at the kitchen counter, flipping through documents he wasn't reading. His thoughts were with Zara, with the twins, with the moment he knew would come, when she might walk out for good. He heard footsteps and looked up. Zara stood there, suitcase in hand. "I'm not assuming anything," she said quickly, her voice trembling. "But I needed to be ready, just in case." Chase didn't move. "You said you didn't want this to be a contract anymore," she continued. "But I've lived a long time not expecting people to stay." He stood and crossed the room in slow steps, his expression unreadable. Then, reaching into his coat pocket, he pulled out something, a small velvet box. Zara blinked. "What is that?" He opened it, but inside wasn't a ring. It was a key. "To the house?" she asked softly. He nodded. "To your home, if you choose to make it one." Tears sprang to her eyes before she could stop them. "I want you here, Zara, not just as the mother of my children, but as you, for you," Chase said, his voice rough with emotion. "I've spent my life avoiding anything I couldn't control, and I nearly missed the best thing that's ever happened to me." She looked down at the key, then back at him. "How do I know you won't run when it gets hard? When I'm not glowing and perfect and everything the magazines think a family should be?" He took her hand. "Because I already did that. I already lived the kind of life where I ran from every real feeling. And it nearly destroyed me. But you showed me something better. And now I don't want anything else." Zara hesitated. Her heart was pounding. Every part of her screamed to say yes, but the fear of heartbreak was still there, buried deep. "I need you to understand," she whispered. "This isn't about being taken care of. I'm not staying because I need saving." "I know," Chase said gently. "You were never a damsel. You were the reason I changed. You saved me." She looked down at the key in her palm, and slowly nodded. "I'll stay." Chase's chest released a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. He pulled her into a tight embrace, gentle but full of emotion. Zara closed her eyes and let herself feel it. The security, the warmth, the future. It was real. A few weeks later, the mansion's garden transformed for a quiet, intimate ceremony. There were no reporters, no flash, just simplicity and sincerity. Zara wore a soft, ivory dress that caught the breeze just right. Her hair curled loosely around her shoulders. Chase wore a charcoal suit, looking less like a businessman and more like a man finally at peace. Stephanie held the twins, Ava and Lucas, both dressed in cream knit onesies with tiny matching booties. The staff, who had become more like family, stood nearby, holding tissues and smiling with warmth. Vows were short, heartfelt. There was no need for grand speeches. They had already lived through the proof of their love. Every late night feeding, every laugh in the hallway, every quiet glance over tea, it was all there, in the silence between words. When Chase took Zara's hands, He said simply. "Thank you for not giving up on me." She replied, "Thank you for showing me that I could trust again." As they kissed, the wind picked up just slightly, rustling the leaves and lifting the corners of the ceremony cloth. A new chapter had begun. Life didn't suddenly become perfect. There were still sleepless nights and baby fevers and forgotten bottle warmers. But it was real, and they were in it together. Chase learned to swaddle with YouTube tutorials. He changed diapers, awkwardly at first. Then with confidence, he even started singing lullabies. Off-key but with effort. Zara, too, grew into motherhood, soft but fierce. Tired but radiant, she painted again, her canvases now filled with images of family, laughter, and quiet moments that once seemed impossible. One afternoon, as the twins played on a soft mat under the garden tree, Chase and Zara sat side by side watching them. Their laughter filled the air, high-pitched, innocent, perfect. Zara looked over at Chase. "Are you happy?" He turned to her, eyes soft. "I didn't know what happiness felt like until now." She reached over and laced her fingers through his. "I want this," she said quietly. "Every day." "You have it," he replied. "Every day. For the rest of our lives." And as the sun dipped low and the twins giggled in the grass, their story, once built on a contract, was now stitched with love, laughter, and second chances. The seasons turned gently after the ceremony, and life settled into something rich, imperfect, and real. Days began with soft baby coos and the smell of brewed coffee. Nights often ended with quiet exhaustion, both Chase and Zara falling asleep beside the twins. A bottle forgotten on the nightstand, lullabies still humming in the air. Zara's artwork began to reflect their new world. She painted the garden where Ava took her first steps. She sketched Lucas nestled in Chase's arms, drooling on his expensive shirt, while Chase laughed, unbothered by the mess. Something unthinkable just a year ago. The mansion, once a cold space of power and contracts, had transformed. The echo of heels on marble floors was now joined by the pitter-patter of small feet and the rustling of toys scattered across the living room. Even the staff moved differently, less formally, more like a family sharing something special. One day, as Chase stood in his home office surrounded by shelves of deals, acquisitions, and achievements, his eyes fell on a photo framed in silver. It was simple, Zara holding the twins under the tree. No suits, no titles, just them. He smiled, closed the ledger in front of him, and walked out. In the kitchen, Zara was baking banana muffins with Ava on her hip and Lucas clinging to her leg. "You're early," she said with a smirk as Chase stepped in. "I had a board meeting," he replied, kissing her on the cheek and reaching for a spoonful of batter. "Did it go well?" "I didn't go." She paused. "What?" "I canceled it," he said casually, lifting Lucas into his arms. "Turns out, I'd rather be here with you." Zara studied him. "You're turning into a softie." "Only for you," he said with a grin. She rolled her eyes, but her heart swelled. Later that evening, after the twins had fallen asleep with tiny fists curled against their blankets, Chase and Zara sat on the patio wrapped in a shared blanket, sipping warm cider. The garden lights glowed softly around them. The air was crisp, peaceful. "I still think about that day," she whispered. He turned to her. "The day I found you on the sidewalk?" She nodded. "I had nothing then, just a pencil and some paper. I was invisible." "You were never invisible to me," he said, pulling her closer. "I saw you from the very beginning, even when I didn't understand what I was seeing." Zara looked at him with tears in her eyes, tears not of sorrow, but of gratitude. "You changed everything." "No," he said softly. "You did. You walked into a deal and turned it into a life." They sat in silence for a while, the stars above them clear and brilliant. Then, Chase reached into his pocket and pulled out a small folded piece of paper. "What's that?" Zara asked. "A new contract," he said. She froze. "Not the kind you're thinking." He chuckled, handing it to her. Zara unfolded it. It was handwritten, messy, with crayon marks and doodles Ava had clearly added. It read, "Agreement of forever. Between Chase Donovan and Zara Brooks. Terms: 1. Love without condition. 2. Laugh every day. 3. Share snacks, secrets, and dreams. 4. Raise our children with wonder. 5. Grow old together." Signed, C. Donovan, Z. Brooks. Ava's crayon squiggle. Lucas's handprint. Zara clutched it to her chest, laughing and crying all at once. I accept, she whispered. Chase leaned over and kissed her gently. That's all I needed to hear. As time moved forward, the story of Chase and Zara became legend in their own small world. Not the tale of a millionaire and a homeless woman. Not the scandal of a transaction turned romance. But the quiet story of two people who found home in each other, where trust was earned. Love grew in silence, and family was built not from perfection, but from perseverance and choice. On their 5th anniversary, Chase commissioned a sculpture to be placed beneath the garden tree. It was simple. A woman sitting with 2 children in her lap, all looking up at the sky. He called it, "The moment everything changed." Because it did. Because it always can. If you choose love. If you choose to stay. Thank you for watching this beautiful story of second chances, unexpected love, and the quiet strength of choosing each other, again and again. Comment below where you're watching from. We love seeing our global family. And don't forget to subscribe to Tell Night. Hit the bell for notifications. Like the video, and share your favorite part in the comments.